everyone, welcome back to my channel. So this is going to be a continuation of my favorite books of 2021. The first one I did specific titles, and I am saving some of those titles for this video because I fell deep into the rabbit hole with specific authors last year, and I felt like I was doing them an injustice if I only talked about one title. So, I'm a big romance reader. Romance is very easy to just mass consume in one go, and that's what I did. I usually found a title that I fell in love with from an author and then went through their entire backlist and binged everything. So that's what I'm here to talk to you about, the authors that I did that with in the last year. So let's see. So we're gonna start off light and then delve into a lot of the obsessions that I came across. So light, I did talk about this one book because I'm not deep into her backlist, but I'm working through it and she's a new favorite author, and that is Kristin Callahan. I read Make It Sweet, I was sold. I then read Dear Enemy, which should have been read before Make It Sweet because we meet these characters first. But basically, Kristin Callahan is my new go-to contemporary emotional romance author. She just manages to write very real human experiences in very relatable ways. I don't know if that was a good explanation. I just felt like she wrote like the human experience in such a good, tangible way for all of us to like understand it and relate to the characters in the most realistic way possible. I'm rambling. These are just words coming out of my mouth here. Both of these I'm obsessed with. I'm working through her Rockstar series. I believe she also has a sports romance series. This is just an author that I'm going to come back to for years to come. Just saying. Switching gears into fantasy, paranormal-y type of romance. No surprise to anybody. Savage Lands swept the world last year, and I was riding that bandwagon with everybody else. But I also went deeper than a lot of people. So I've read all of this. I was an ARC reader for Badlands when this came out. I'm obsessed with this series. Like, you can't touch Warwick. Fight me. But she has 3 other series that are set in this world that take place prior to this series. I think this series is superior, don't get me wrong, but I read all of the Darkness series, which is how we kind of learn about like the Fae influence in the world and all of the creatures that exist in this world. It reads like old paranormal romance, but I kind of loved it, and that's like a 6 or 7 book series. I read all of that. And then there are 2 other series that I'm going to kind of stagger in throughout this coming year because they all follow a parallel timeline. So like we kind of know how the series is gonna end, but we're following different characters in each of these 3 series, and all of those 3 series lead up to this, if that makes sense. You don't have to read those backstories to understand what's going on in this, because I didn't. I started with this series, but I am obsessed with Stacey Marie Brown. That's all. Okay, let's talk about another author that I jumped on the bandwagon with and has introduced me to the reverse harem world of the romance genre. And that author, much like everybody else who kind of started to get introduced to reverse harems this year, is Tate James. So I started with the Madison Kate series, which is where a lot of people recommend starting to get into reverse harems. I am going to second that. I think it's a really good place to get started if you're looking to get into that part of the genre, because they are so addicting. So the Madison Kate series is a 4-book series, and then I read the Hades series, which is the follow-up kind of spin-off series of that. That one, phenomenal. A little bit longer than I think it should have been, but it was also way darker than the Madison Kate series. Madison Kate, to me, is kind of like lighthearted dark romance. Like, there's some questionable things that happen in it. It's a little dark. There's like a stalker plot overtone. I basically jumped in with Tate James and haven't looked back in the reverse harem world, and it's been great. So if you're looking to get into it, start with Madison Kate. They are stellar. And that's all. I'm very excited for the Guild series, but also if you've read Madison Kate, you know that I'm waiting until that series is complete before I start book 1, because she is the queen of cliffhangers. So last year was the year of Tate James. Okay, another author that I didn't discover her last year, but I got into her last year is Claire Kingsley. So I read her book Boyfriend books a long time ago, probably like 2-3 years ago, and I liked them, but they didn't stand out to me. I read the Miles family series by her and was obsessed. They are the closest things that I've come to the True North series and the Jameson Valley series, where it's just like small town, farm family vibes, where each book follows a different romance of a different brother, of a different person in the town, but you get to see all of the siblings and all of the townsfolk that you meet. It's my favorite thing. I love series that are at least 4 or 5 books long, where each one follows a different brother of a farm family. It gives me found family feels along with a really good romance. I just adored it. So I binged through all of that, and I started the spin-off series also. I read a lot of Claire Kingsley last year, and I have no regrets. Okay, another author that doesn't have many out, but I wanted to include her in this video because I'm about to jump down the rabbit hole. She has one series out prior to the release of the Twisted series. This is Anna Huang. Twisted Love swept the romance world early last year. So did Twisted Games at the end of last year, and Twisted Hate is out now. I am currently reading it as I'm filming it, and this is just an author that I am just obsessed with. This is an author that doesn't have that many titles, so I feel like I probably should have included this in the first video. It's okay. But I consider these two very different stories, so there you go. I'm obsessed with Anna Huang. Anything she's going to come out with, I'm going to read at this point because her romances are great. They are spicy. They're covering different tropes. Like, this one is kind of dark vibes, crime family sort of things. There's like The Princess Diaries, but make it sexy. So she's covering the tropes. Another author that I went hard with over all of last year is Sierra Simone. So I read A Lesson in Thorns by her a couple years ago, and I liked it, but I wasn't like blown away by it. And I haven't continued on with the series. I might, but I'm nervous because I haven't heard the best things about the follow-up books in this series. This is the Thornchapel series. So I'm hesitant. This was my first one by her. Didn't sell me on her, but I did read the new Camelot series by her last year. I was obsessed with this book. I personally think the series went downhill as the books went, but I still obsessively read them. Basically, nobody can write smut like Sierra Simone. Like, she is on a different level from every other super spicy, super erotic romance author. Her sex scenes are just different, okay? They hit different. So basically, if you're coming to her, know that. So this series, I was obsessed with this book. I read American Prince immediately after this, and I read American Gang towards the end of the year, and I had opinions. They weren't great, but I still think she's top-tier smut writer. And I also went through the entire Priest series. This is the fancy Mystic Box version of Priest. I have the rest of them on my shelves. Father Bell. That's all I'm going to say, right? So I worked my way hard through Sierra Simone's books this past year. I spread them out because I feel like her books are a lot. Like, a lot. She puts a lot of drama in her books, but she also puts a lot of spice in her books. And you kind of need to pace yourselves with them, you know? I just kind of read her stuff throughout the entire year. So last year was the year of Sierra Simone. Another author that I touched on at the very, very end of the year that I am now working through still her backlist is Sophie Lark. I read the Brutal Birthright series basically back to back, and I am now working on the Kingmaker series, and she also has the Sinners duet, Devils and Sinners, whatever duet that's out, the serial killer one. She writes really good. I don't consider the Brutal Birthright series a mafia series, even though that's what it's pitched as. There were not many mafia vibes in those books, but it was just really good, sometimes dark romances that were just stellar. Some of them were hits, some of them were misses for me, but I thoroughly enjoyed myself through that entire series, into the next one, and probably into the next one. So that was an author I discovered last year, towards the end of last year. That was like how I ended the year. And the last author that I'm going to talk about, I went hard with, and that is T.M. Frasier. So I read the King series, the whole King series, in 1 month. It was like an entire 4-week session of me just binging through that entire series. So it's broken down into like series of duets and trilogies. So I read like the King duet, and then I read Bear's duet, and then I read Preppy Story, and then I also went back and read all of the spin-off novellas and novels, like the standalones of other characters that we met in that series, and it was dark. T.M. Frasier does not shy away from the messed up stuff. Like, she's very graphic with both her sexy times and the not so sexy times. So her books I'm gonna always give you guys trigger warnings for. Just look into content warnings before picking that series up. But I went hard with DM Frasier, and I'm kind of scared to go back at this point because that was a rough month of reading. Those were heavy books, but I thoroughly enjoyed myself. They were great. So those are the authors that I went hard for in 2021, and that's kind of how I go about my reading these days, is I basically will pick up a book that I see people talking about, fall in love with it, and then go, oh no, I'm in danger, and read the entire backlist of that author. So I'm very excited to see what I'm going to pick up in 2022, because that tends to be my rhythm of reading. So prepare yourselves for entire 3-week chunk times of me just binging an entire author, because that's my style of reading. So that's going to be it. If you guys discovered authors, or if you guys were just obsessed with a series or a book or something, let me know down in the comments. I hope you guys enjoyed this, and I'll see you guys in my next one.